It's the holiday season, and we say Happy Hanukkah and season's greetings to all. And thank you for joining us for this edition of Moral Side of the News. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade-For-Children. We have a panel and we have topics this week, so let's get started. On this week's program, the video of a Tennessee boy bullied by schoolmates goes viral and sparks discussions nationwide. Plus, some of Facebook's early supporters now say that Facebook and social media in general are damaging society. We'll discuss these topics with our distinguished panel here today on our program, Moral Side of the News. With us this week are Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition, Father Joe Graffis, Archdiocese of Louisville, Dr. Marion Taylor, South Frankfort Presbyterian Church, Rabbi Emeritus Stan Miles, Temple Shalom, and Dr. John Slider, Breckenridge Chapel Free Methodist. Up first on this edition of our program, this week a Tennessee boy, his tearful plea about being bullied goes viral. Keaton Jones's mother recorded the video shortly after she picked him up from school one day.
They make fun of my nose. They call me ugly. They say I have no friends.
What'd they do to you at lunch?
Poured milk on me and put a hand down my clothes. Threw bread at me.
Is it just you?
Yep.
Or is it other kids?
Since the video was posted on social media, dozens of athletes and celebrities have expressed their support for Keaton, with the hashtag #StandWithKeaton trending on Twitter. Keaton's plea has spurred nationwide discussion, but discussion about bullying across the country as well as locally. WHS 11's Holden Kerwicki talked with one family that says they've been at 6 different schools and the bullying just continues.
They talk about you, sometimes they hit you, sometimes they can shove you, sometimes they can talk about your mother, sometimes they can talk about your weight, your looks.
This is only part of what Joshua Neal McKnight says he deals with on a daily basis.
I've been getting bullied since I was in preschool.
The bullying has gotten so bad that Joshua's grades are slipping and he doesn't want to go to school.
But then when children come to the teachers and say, hey, this is happening, you just like nonchalantly like, okay, it's normal, it's okay. So you're telling them that it's okay for people to keep picking with them.
Sharita Neal says she followed the JCPS protocol of reaching out to teachers and then administrators at Highland Middle, but nothing changed.
If a parent is calling you with a concern, be genuinely concerned, because if I feel like you just brush me off, I'm gonna keep bugging you.
Sharita says she wasn't aware that JCPS had set up a bullying tip line, which has received 309 calls since its creation in January of 2016.
I went to the board. The lady came down to the lobby. She asked me some questions, wrote some stuff down, said she was going to email the principal. Haven't heard from anybody. Nobody.
The wait has this mother at wit's end.
I'm like, what else do I have to do? Somebody has to do something. Bullying is not okay.
Which is why she is considering sending her son to yet another school.
I want to go to the Phoenix School.
So we turn to our panel on our program, Moral Side of the News. And panel, 2 questions. How do we keep children from being bullied, and who's responsible when bullying occurs?
This is a really serious question. I've been through all of this in several different Catholic schools, and so it's not just a public school. One of the challenges I find, though, is that a lot of the bullying is not so much in school, although we've had that, and I thought we kind of dealt with that, but most of it happens after school on Facebook and those kind of things, are when people are other places, which schools have no way of controlling that. That's kind of the parents' responsibility. But I think what's really a challenge for us, and I don't want to get into political stuff with this, but there's so much bullying that goes on today in our country in lots of different places, on lots of different levels, whether it's television or it's politics or whatever it is. But I think the kids keep watching all this. Well, everybody does it, so it must be all right. And but for very sensitive kids, it is really devastating, and we've had a lot of suicides. But it's really a challenge for teachers, because you can talk to your blue in the face about this, but kids just don't hear that at all.
I do want to share a positive story and maybe an encouraging story about your last point about who hears what. I was out in front of our church one day on the sidewalk, and high school students were walking by. 3 guys, they looked like they were about 16. And one of them was saying, go ahead and post it. I mean, it happened. She did it. And the other one said, no. He said, that would be cyberbullying. And the other one said, just do it. You know what happened. And he said, no, it's not worth ruining somebody's life. And so I took so much encouragement from that, because that's a message that seems to be getting through. And then the kids can begin to persuade or dissuade each other from that behavior. You know, all the great moral leaders that I can think of tried to convert bullies. You know, and didn't give up on them. Big bully in Jesus' time was the Roman Empire, but it was also tax collectors, and he tried to convert them. Mahatma Gandhi tried to convert the British Empire and by appealing to their sense of honor, shame, and fair play. Martin Luther King Jr. did likewise. So I think we have to not give up on that. That the question of who and how, I mean, the teachers, their main job is to convey some kind of curriculum. They're also trying to teach moral character, but they've got to have some serious backup on an issue like this so that they can keep the whole class moving forward on the curriculum.
Well, you got, you know, bullying is as American as cherry pie. Sad to say, man, been around for eons. You refer to the Bible, of course. The bully, the most famous bully episode in the Bible was David and Goliath. Now, he didn't try to convert Goliath, but
Try to make an impression upon him.
Absolutely.
A deep impression.
But he did confront the bully, and he confronted the bully with a strong sense of, you know, self-esteem. That is a bit of a problem with many of the victims of bullying in schools and so forth. So that there is are examples of how to respond to bullies, or in our Judeo-Christian experience.
I'm not sure I agree that armed combatants are really quite the same thing.
Yeah, but that's probably the greatest bully story of all time. That even, you know, so I've always been a fan of that story for a variety of reasons. But not all bully episodes end that way. So there is a word of caution that needs to accompany that Bible story. You need to rightly divide the word. But bullying it takes place at a lot of levels. You suggested that in our atmosphere with social media, we'll talk about that a bit. It happens at all kind of levels. There's the proverbial bully pulpit that has been ascribed to the presidency on occasion, not just now, but over the ages, which means you have a high platform, so you have an opportunity to express a view because you have a bully pulpit to do that. And sad to say, it has been used and abused on many occasions. So people in power have sad to say often abused the power that they've had, and that's nothing new. So that is a form of bullying that's always taking place anytime you have the stronger taking advantage of the weak. That's a bullying episode. But in schools, the micro situation that's referred to in this particular story, you know, that has been going on since they've been in schools, since they've been kids. And but the good news is the schools have attempted to create a system, a protocol by which you can manage and respond to these, like the young lady suggested at Highland. I don't know if the school followed their protocol, but there was a protocol in place because the phenomenon has become so pervasive. So, I mean, this is a sad episode. It's gone viral, as they say. But what about all the overwhelming stories that don't go viral? They don't get the overwhelming support. This is an isolated case and sad, but he did get a lot of support, and unlike many of those who do not have access.
When I was a kid in what was then junior high school, I was bullied relentlessly by a couple of kids, and it was a very lonely place to be, terribly lonely. Now the school systems are trying to take care of it. I'm always wary when I hear the term zero tolerance, because I know what tolerance is, but I don't know, I can't put my arms around zero. I think that it is the responsibility of the school community, if the person who is being bullied or their parents let it be known that there is a bullying incident going on. I never told a soul. I just figured it was something I had to deal with, and I would deal with it. I wish I had. But it is the loneliest place in the world to be. And when I first saw that clip of the young man in the car, I sat there and I started sobbing, because that brought me back 50 years ago, or more than 50 years ago. I know the place where that kid was, and it is the worst place in the world.
I can't find anything to disagree with. Normally I'm a little bit, I know, Clay, shaking your head.
This is the gift that keeps on giving.
It's early in the show, though, John,
That
so
must be it.
So yes, the two examples we saw in the preliminary package, is that the technical term?
Sounds good.
And then Stan, you're sharing, I have no doubt occurred. Our daughter went through, who is a very strong physically and mentally and spiritually, a very emotionally strong person, experienced that. When you get a group working against an individual, it's hard to respond, but the response has to be, and I think I connect with your story, David and Goliath, well, not your story, but the story of David and Goliath, Clay. The response has to be strength, and not necessarily a violent response, but sometimes that's the case. We who are mature adults and have a spiritual strength need to intervene, and I think that's where the encouragement is. That an intervention in some way has to happen. You mentioned zero tolerance. I don't think systems, no matter how well intended the bureaucrats within them, respond that well. I think individuals need to respond and show strength. I guess my only word of caution in this is, and I don't doubt the instances that were shared here, either with us or on the video. We tend to have a culture that of victimization, victimology, I guess. Not every instance of bullying may be really an instance of bullying. It just may be somebody perceiving themselves or wanting to perceive themselves as a victim. There's been some examples, one in the Navy, I think one in the U.S. Army, where persons have set up instances that put them in as a victim of something, of bullying, when they created it themselves. And I'm not wanting to cast doubt on everything. We need to hear things and observe things with seriousness, but realize that sometimes it's the individual, who is having these things or expressing these things is.
You don't always just go ahead, Mary.
I wanted to say one more thing about strength, because it doesn't always have to be violent.
No,
because it's possible for people who are more popular to visibly side with someone who's being picked on, and then people back off. I was lucky enough growing up to be that person. And I can think of at least twice when I was growing up, when I saw somebody who was targeted, and I befriended them or just simply stood with them, and people backed off.
Social strength.
Two things I wanted to make
Okay.
real quickly
Okay.
is, and I don't mean this as a stereotype, but one of the challenges we had in our school is the biggest bullies were not the boys. It's the girls, especially in middle school. They can be very, very cruel, and how to deal with that. But I think one of the things dealing with it is, how do we deal, I mean, parents have a right to ask the school for help, but how do we help parents? Because I think a lot of the language parents use, and some of the kids that we saw as the biggest bullies, were just mirroring some of the things they were hearing at home.
Behavior.
The other thing that overcoming it, recently at one school I was at, I I didn't really know this, but somebody said, oh, there's bullying going on in the 8th grade. And I happened to have an interview with one of the kids, not even knowing. And then I found out later he was one of the biggest bullies. And somehow our conversation, which was not about it at all, he kind of brought it up, and we just talked about it. And I don't know what the heck I said, or maybe God said, but something snapped and he changed and did not become a bully anymore. And of course I kept affirming him after that. So little things can make a big difference. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but one quick point, John, you mentioned that it has to be an individual response. I said many of the victims don't have that luxury.
No.
True. Yeah.
So you have to have
That's true.
some systems in place to protect the weak.
Right.
And because if they were strong
Or the
enough,
fragile, maybe. is
right,
that
the
a word?
fragile. If they were strong enough, they wouldn't be bullied in the first place. So you have to have systems in place to protect the weak.
All right, we're going to move on to a second topic on our program, Moral Side of the News, and it furthers the discussion about social media. Now some of Facebook's early backers have become its sharpest critics. Sean Parker, the company's first president, said in a public forum that Facebook exploits a, quote, vulnerability in human psychology to addict its users. A former Facebook vice president who joined the company in 2007 recently told an audience at Stanford University that the company is, quote, ripping apart the social fabric of how society works, end quote. And Roger McNamee, a venture capitalist and early investor in both Facebook and Google, has written that both companies, quote, threaten public health and democracy. So now we turn to our panel and our program, Moral Side of the News. A panel, are you surprised about the response of these people who were there at the beginning associated with Facebook?
I'm not surprised. I'm gratified. I'm gratified because I'm one of these people who, quite honestly, tries to have as little to do with Facebook as possible. And I found myself in situations where people would come to me and say, I have continually tried to friend you on Facebook, and you haven't replied to my requests. And when you say, quite honestly, I just don't go in that direction with Facebook or any social media, those poor souls don't take no for an answer, and they get very, very angry and terribly insulted, and no insult was ever meant, but that's just not, you know, that's just not part of what I do or who I am, and take it or leave it.
Let me ask you, Stanley, do you have a Facebook page?
No.
You don't? Okay, good.
No, I do not.
Are you surprised these people were there? They obviously made a lot of money on Facebook.
So
in the early days,
they're
and now
claiming that their creation, like
Right.
Frankenstein,
It's run
for lack of
amok.
a better term, they've created a monster.
Well, and I think in fairness, if I read the whole story, is that some of these people were there several years ago, and I think Facebook seems to be trying to correct some of these things. But like everything, Facebook can be, I mean, I find it a good source sometimes of information about birthdays, or sometimes someone will tell me about a death or something like that. And that's really been helpful. But I check it maybe once a day, but I don't get involved in a whole lot. So, but you've got Instagram, you've got Twitter, you know, all these things, and
Snapchat,
many of them
everything,
are. We heard actually in a board meeting today about some of the incredible advantages of social media, but there's this downside, this viciousness, this attack type of thing, and I don't know how they're going to control that, you know, but you got to control it in some way.
Well, I mean, we have our Twitter in chief, who is one who is addicted, and I think that's a safe description to it. And he does a lot of things. He even bullies on occasion. Some may even claim that occurs on Twitter in particular. You know, like with anything created, I mean, you can make something evil out of cotton candy.
The nutritionist would say that.
Nutritionists would say the splitting
Feed it to a
atom.
diabetic.
What's the
Splitting
common
up-
connection? Oh, human beings.
Splitting
yes.
of the atom. You know, you could have microwave, and you have, you know, the atom bomb. I mean, so it's a lot of good and evil that can come from anything.
But it's not,
You know.
I'm sorry, Marianne, go ahead.
That's true. There's also a science to addiction. I've studied how this works in the gambling industry and how the gambling machines work.
Oh, it is
and
designed.
so they may be actually confessing that they have created
Designed
this
it,
in
right.
such a way
Right.
that people will be addicted. There is a science to human relationships. A relationship's going to do better if every time the other person makes a bid, they call it, a bid for affirmation or attention, just some kind of response. Some high percentage you need to respond to the bids. What happens with the social media is you can put out endless number of bids and get a huge response in a way that you really can't just standing in your kitchen making a bid for, you know, your spouse's attention over the slicing of an apple. So that part is a little bit addictive, and I don't know whether they're kind of confessing that they have sort of scientifically designed it that way, the way the gambling machines have been
believe it
scientifically
is.
designed or not.
I believe it is. Because you have a like mechanism built into it. I don't know if you've seen it. There's ability to like, but there's not ability to dislike, really. You
But
can
is this any different than, go back in time, radio came along, then television came
Well,
along, and this is the next logical
well,
step, or is it different?
I can't attach, or I won't attach moral motives to a particular technology. Technology is technology, and as I kind of said in passing, it's the operator that's bringing the sinfulness into it, or the addictive behavior into it.
Right. Technology.
Yeah, and so we really, of course, how much introspection goes into developing these, Facebook or radio or whatever. I don't think much moral decision, morality really doesn't have a lot of decision. But radio broadcasts all sorts of propaganda, and in its heyday, it was a vehicle for entertainment. The family could gather around it, but also some evil thoughts. Technology to me is neutral. There is an addictive element. I've got my little game that I sit and say, okay, this is my last one. It's a little solitaire game. No, wait a minute, I can do much better.
That's you, huh? Okay, good to know.
And my name is John.
But the creators can create a
Moral Side
different
Support
feature,
Group.
like Marion alluded to, such as the tobacco industry was proven that when they added ingredients to the tobacco and the menthol and the like, it heightens the sensation to maximize the addiction, to keep you coming back for more and more and more. So many times they can create some things to manipulate the product so that you do become addictive in a way that could be destructive.
Well, I think one of the challenges, with the likes is we talk about tribalism in our country, that sometimes people only get their information from Facebook or their tribe, and that splits us apart. And I don't know what it's. There's some ad on television where 4 people are sitting in a room and they all got their phones. And maybe we could stop and have conversation, and they all look at you like, huh? And then I'll go to a restaurant and you'll see families that are all on their devices, and it's like something's not right here.
It's funny you mentioned that, because just this week the communications committee at my congregation met because some organization is marketing to us a church app.
Right.
And it's all comprehensive and everything. And one of the things that there's some good features to it, but one of them that really turned me off was in this church app, you can have the sermon outline with place for people to take notes. And I suddenly thought, what it would be like to preach while people were taking notes like this on my sermon. Sorry, market it some other way, folks.
Okay, we're going to go to our third topic. Since it's the holiday season here at Moral Side of the News, and we want to take time to talk to youngsters served by the WHAS Crusade-For-Children, the chance to talk to and about Santa Claus. Take a look.
Santa's a reindeer. Ho, ho, ho.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays!
Santa turns a car.
Well, actually, the reindeers like carrots. We make different kind of cookies all the time when Santa comes.
Happy holiday.
I have a present on my shirt, and it's in this box on my shirt. Okay.
Santa, where does he live?
In the North Pole. Yeah, the North Pole.
What does he put in that sleigh?
I don't know. I don't know what he puts in it. Maybe something like a steering wheel or something.
Have you thought about what you want for Christmas, what you want Santa to bring you?
Boots. And some new clothes. And some new boots. Yeah, like an alligator.
Why do you want an alligator?
'Cause it's so silly.
We want to thank the students at Visually Impaired Preschool Services here in Louisville for that little slice of heaven there. So panel, it's the holiday season. What do you want from Santa? And what do you want for your congregations as we go into the holidays?
Well, many of our viewers and listeners may not know that before we gather, we have a sock challenge. And so, John, you and Stan really outdid me this time. I think Stan won.
Yep.
Stan's too embarrassed to show his socks. But so I want a pair of socks, and then I want everybody to think of the Crusade for Children for a donation at the end of the year.
I like that. That's the
I was
good
kind
answer.
of holding on.
Snuck that one in
but
there.
you made it in just right there.
I can't top that. I guess I would just add that for some reason this year I'm thinking how important it is for all of us to treasure the people we love while we have them.
I would echo that. I think one of my themes this year is to thank as many people as possible, because I think the bottom line of all spirituality is Thanksgiving. And we don't do that often enough. So I've even done it at a checkout at Target, and the lady said, I've been here 10 years and no one's ever thanked me.
Wow.
Thank you. So that's a good thing to start, because God is in those thank yous.
I agree with Joe entirely, and in the spirit of the season, peace on earth and goodwill, I pray for next year to be a year where we'll have the opportunity to talk with one another and not just at one another.
And I affirm the virtue and the spirit of Santa, whether you believe or not. But I believe that the values communicated by Santa Claus are virtuous and worth embracing. And I think that we need that spirit to pervade us. We have enough meanness and callous and selfishness that we need more civility and caring in our society. So if we can just do that and embrace that spirit, then I think we'll be a better world. So that might sound syrupy sweet, but that's where it is.
Well, in the spirit of Hanukkah, maybe be lights to the world.
Right.
Yes.
And we want to say Happy Hanukkah, Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, what other faith tradition you share. We hope it's full of warmth and light for you and your family. And as John Slider mentioned, if you'd like to take the opportunity to make a year-end tradition,
There you go.
give to the WHAS Crusade for Children. Just go to whascrusade.org and you can make a nice contribution. So thanks for watching and listening to this program, Moral Side of the News, and join us again next week as the conversation continues. Happy holidays.